Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and in this video we're going to learn about routing in your React applications. Okay, so before we dive into this video, I do want to let you know that I expect you to be familiar with the basics of React. So you should know what React components are, what props are, what state is, just the basic stuff, nothing too advanced. And I also expect you to have Node.js installed on your machine, and you should also know how to work with NPM. Okay, so let's dive right in. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install this Create React App package on your computer. Now, as you know, Create React App allows you to build your React applications with no build configuration. So you don't have to worry about writing any of the Webpack or Babel files. Okay, so to install this package, just go to your terminal and type in npm install create-react-app-g. Now, this command is telling npm to install this package globally on your machine. So once you have pressed enter, let it do its thing, and once it's done, come back to this video and you'll be good to go. Okay, so how do you initialize a Create React App project? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my desktop, and then I'm going to say create-react-app followed by the name of the project, and in my case I'm going to call it router. And yes, I know that I'm British, so I'm supposed to call it router, but router is like basically the international term, so in this video I'm going to stick to router. So create React App followed by the name of the project, which in my case is router. So if I press enter, it's going to place a project folder right about there. And now it's just grabbing all the necessary dependencies and the build configuration that it needs for this project to run. Okay, now that it's been done, right there at the bottom, it's first asking me to navigate to the project folder. So let's do just that, cd router. And then it's asking me to launch this project by typing out this command, which is yarn start. Now keep in mind that this could be npm start in your case, so just type in npm start. Okay, so I'm going to type in yarn start, press enter, and this is basically going to launch a live server where our project is going to run. Okay, now that it's working, let's just go ahead and open this folder into a code editor. Now the editor that I'm going to use in this video is Visual Studio Code, but you can use whatever you want. Now, within this folder, it's just a lot of boilerplate code that Create React App provides us with. So this includes the public folder, the source folder, but the source folder is what we're going to be concerned with. And within this folder is this app.js file that we're going to be primarily working with. Okay, now this is a lot of boilerplate code that we don't really need. So I'm going to get rid of something inside of this div. So I'm going to get rid of this header. I'm going to get rid of this paragraph tag, and I'm also going to get rid of these two imports right there because we don't need them. Okay, press save, go back to the browser, make sure everything's working fine. Let's just open up the developer tools. There are no errors and we're good to go. Excellent. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, let me just zoom in out a little bit more. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install a package called React Router, because React Router does not come built into React, so we have to install it manually using npm. So just go back to your terminal, and I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to say yarn add React Router, and I only need the version of React Router that runs within the web browser, so I'm going to say React Router -dom. Now again, you can just type in npm install. I have this yarn package manager installed on my computer, so that's why I'm using yarn, but if you don't have it, just type in npm install react router dom. It's basically the same thing. Press enter, and it may take a minute or two depending on the speed of your internet, but in my case it's been installed. Okay, so let's just go back to our project. Go to package.json, make sure this project is there, React Router DOM, excellent. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to grab a few named exports from this package that we have just installed. So I'm gonna say import, and when you are grabbing some named exports, you include them in a pair of curly braces. Okay, the first one's called browser router, and the second one's called route. And we're gonna grab this from this React router down package that we have just installed. Okay, if I press save, go back to the web browser. Now this right there is just ESLint complaining that we have these two variables over there, but we have not used them. So let's just go ahead and use them now. Okay, so I'm actually gonna get rid of this div right there because this browser router is a wrapper component that we can wrap all our routes inside our application. So this browser router acts as the wrapper div, okay? And inside there, we define our routes using this route import. Now, this route import is basically a self-closing tag, and that is exactly what we're gonna type in right there. So I'm gonna just initialize a tag, paste in route, and close it. Now, this route component takes a few parameters, okay? The first parameter is the name of the URL that's going to end up right there. So if I say, and this parameter is called path. So path equals, let's call it /new. Now this /new is going to end up right there, just like this, /new, okay? And once this URL has been visited, what do we want to do? And that is where we use our next parameter, which is called component. And make sure the C is lowercase. Okay, but we don't have a component that we want to put right there. So let's just go ahead and create a dummy component, and I'm going to call it new route, and I'm going to set it equal to a stateless functional component, and then I'm going to return some very basic JSX. Okay, let's just create a div, within that div a paragraph, and let's just call it new route. And now this is the component that we want to render out once we hit this URL. So if I go back to my web browser, right now it's just the home page, which means there are no URL parameters. But if I say /new, and if I visit this component, if I visit this URL, it's gonna render out this component right there. So this is routing in a nutshell. Now, it's just a matter of creating more routes, more components, and then linking them together, okay? And I'm actually gonna get rid of this component because let's just add a little bit of structure within our application. And I'm also gonna get rid of this route right there. Press save, go back to the browser, make sure there are no errors. Okay, so now I'm gonna create a new folder within the source folder, and I'm gonna call it components. Okay, now within this component, the first file I'm going to create is called home.js. And this is going to be the component that shows up on our home page. So localhost 3000. This is the component that shows up when there is no URL, okay? So let's first import React from React. And let's create a component called home, and I'm going to set it to a stateless functional component, and then I'm going to return some basic JSX. Okay, a div, and then a paragraph that says home. Now to import this into our app.js file, I first need to export this right here at the bottom. So export default home. Excellent. Now, if I go back to app.js file and right about there, I'm going to import home from /components and then home. So again, to initialize a route, we type in this self-closing HTML tag, and the path is going to be the home tag, the home URL. So this / refers to the main page of the website or the web application. Okay, so if this is the URL, then the component that we want to render out is this home component. Okay, now if I press save, go back to the web browser, and it's not, yeah, there we go. So home component is showing up right there. Okay, So let's just create a couple more files right there. So another one is going to be about.js, and the next one's going to be contact.js. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and copy everything that's inside of this home component, and I'm going to paste this into both of these new components that I've just created. So I'm going to change this to contact, and I'm going to change this to about. Now we just need to go back to app.js file and import these two components that we've just created. Okay, so I'm gonna replace this with about and this with contact. Excellent. Okay, so now we just use the same method to create more routes. So this is the first route. To create a second route, all we need to do is I'm just going to duplicate this line right there, and the path that I want for this about component is /about, and once we hit this URL, the component that I want to render out is this about component. Okay, now the same goes for this contact component, so right there I'm just going to say contact, and the component is going to be contact. Excellent. Okay, so now if I go back to my application, it says a router may only have one child element. And the reason for that is it's saying this browser router can only have one child element, and in this case we have 3. So to fix this, all we need to do is we need to wrap these 3 into a div. Okay, there we go, and this should fix the problem. Let's go back to the web browser, and now if I hit about, it's going to take me to about, and if I hit contact, it's going to take me to contact. Now, one problem you may notice is that this home component is showing up on every page. It's showing up on about, and it's showing up on contact. And the reason for that is this route component starts to match the URLs with this /. So it just checks that this / exists in each of the paths that have been defined at the bottom. So it just renders out this component into each path where this / exists. So to change that, all we need to do is we need to include the keyword exact in the first component. And what this is going to do is it's going to say that only render out this component when the path is exactly this / and nothing is right next to it. Okay, so now if you go back to the web browser, we can see that we're on the contact page, and the home component is gone. And if I go to about, the home component is gone there, and if I just go back to my home page, then it's just showing up the home component. Okay, so what about if we type in a URL that does not exist? Let's say we type in ASDF. Okay, it doesn't show anything, but it's also not giving us any kind of feedback as to what we are trying to do. I mean, it should let us know that, this URL does not exist, or this path does not exist. So let's just make a route for that. Now, to create a route for URLs that don't exist, you basically initialize the same way. And in this case, we don't need to specify a path, because React Router is smart enough to know that when we don't include the path parameter, that means this path does not exist. In which case, we can just render out a component called error. Now, I know that we don't have this error component defined just yet, so let's just go ahead and do just that. So components, create a new file called error.js, and let's just copy from one of these components and paste it right there. So I'm going to change this to error, and let's just say error path does not exist. Okay, now all we need to do is we need to import this error component into our main app.js file. So import error from components and then error. Okay, and we already have a route defined for that. Okay, so now if you go back to a URL that does not exist, it's going to say error path does not exist. And if we go to our home page, and there is the problem. Now it's going to show up on each and every page. So if I go to about, it's going to show on about. If I go to contact, it's going to show on contact. And the reason for that is pretty similar to what happened up there. So all we need to do to fix that is we need to grab another named export from this react router DOM package. So I'm going to say switch. Now this switch is what we're going to use to wrap our routes inside. So I'm just going to replace this with switch. Okay. Now if I press save, go back to the web browser, we can see that the error is gone. And if we visit a different URL, let's say about, it's gone there. If we visit the home URL, it's gone there. And if we visit a URL that does not exist, only then it's going to show us this error. And this is great. Okay, so the only problem that we have right now is we don't always want to manually type in the URLs. I mean, this is terrible user experience. We don't want our users to always have to manually type in a URL that they want to visit. We should provide them with some sort of navigation that where they can click the button or they can click a link and then they get taken to the page that they want to go to. Does that make sense? So let's do just that. So back in our project, let's just create a new file in the components called navigation. Okay, and first we need to import React from React, and this is going to be a stateless functional component. So I'm going to return some JSX, and for now I'm just going to put navigation right there. And right there at the bottom, I'm going to export this. So export default navigation. Excellent. Okay, now back in app.js, let's just import this navigation component. Import navigation from components and then navigation. Now, where do we want to put this navigation component? So let's think about it. We want this navigation component to show up on each and every page. So that means we cannot include this into our routes folder, routes component. So to have this show up on every page, we need to include it outside of this switch component. So right about there. So navigation, and there we go. So if we go back to our web browser, the application breaks again. And the reason for that is just what happened earlier. It's complaining that a router may only have one child element. But in this case, we have multiple. We have a navigation and we have switch. So we have two child elements. So to fix that, all we need to do is we just need to wrap these two in a separate div. So now we are only returning one child element, and inside of this child element we can have as many children as we want. Okay, now if I press save, go back to the web browser, you can see that the navigation component is going to show up on each and every page. So if I go to about, it's going to show on about, and if I go to contact, it's going to show on contact, and if I go to a route that doesn't exist, it's also going to show up there. Now, we don't need this static navigation laying there, okay? There's a reason why I created this component. So to work with this navigation component, I'm going to grab another named export from this React router DOM package. So from React router DOM, and this one's going to be called navlink. Okay? And navlink is a component that it's basically acts like those link tags in the simple HTML where you can link your file, where you can link your web pages to different locations within your website or your web application. So to do that, just type in navlink, and navlink only takes one parameter, which is 2. Now this 2 is going to be responsible for containing the name of the URLs that we have defined right there. So these are what go inside of this 2 parameter. So the first one is going to be directed to the home component. So if the path is /home, then we just want to visit the home component. So let's see that in the web browser. So right now we are on a page, we're on a route that doesn't exist. So right there at the top, it says home. Now, if I click home, it's going to take me to the home component. Okay. And now it's just a matter of duplicating this line a couple of times, changing this to about. So if the path is about, then we want to provide a link that goes to this about. Okay. And right there at the bottom, if the path is contact, then we want to provide a link that goes to contact page. Okay. So let's just test this now. So we're currently on the home page. Now if I press about, it's going to take me to about. And if I press contact, it's going to take me to contact. And if we are on a page that doesn't exist, if I press home or if I press about, it's going to take me to about. Okay, so this is it for this video, guys. Now this isn't everything that you need to know about React Router. Obviously there's a lot more, but now you know how to add routing to your React applications. So if you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.